Here's an interesting statistic that I just got off the internet. It says that nearly 6 out of 10 children participate in extracurricular activities. So we're interested in how does that pertain to Corning High School? Do we measure up to that? Well, a lot of our students do a lot of stuff outside of school. So we want to do this without asking every single student in the school. So we're going to take a sample. And we're just going to take an estimate as to see what percent of our students do extracurricular activities. So I think we should take a sample. Okay, let's do some work on this. Now when we do these intervals, these confidence intervals, we have to establish random, normal, and independent. So first of all, let's make sure that we take a simple random sample of how many kids? Well, I think we should take a sample of 90 kids. The reason I say 90 is that I know that our school has over 900 kids in it. So that means that our sample is 10% or less than the population. So that is our 10% rule that we learned last chapter. That ensures independence so that our sample doesn't, the more kids we take out, it doesn't start to mess with the proportion of the entire population. Okay, keeps everything the same if we only use 10% of the population in our sample. Now, a simple random sample. One way we could do that is, how about that random number table, if you remember that? So let's just have a list of the kids, say alphabetical, and we give them each a number, and now we go down the random number table and just say the first three numbers in that random number table is 147. So you go down our list to kid number 147, and that's the kid you're going to ask, do they do extracurricular stuff? So you do this for 90, that's how you pick the 90 kids that you're going to put in your poll. Okay, that's just kind of a little review of how to use that random number table. Now what about normal? Well, here's the deal. We have to establish what our proportion is before we can go to normal. So let's just say that 43 kids say they do something extracurricular. They're on a sport or a club or something like that. Okay, that is, I'm going to round everything to the nearest 100th. That's 47%, or the proportion is 0.47. So what we're going to do, and don't forget, that is called p hat, right? Which is the proportion of our sample. Now, what we have to do is we say, well, 0.47 times 90, and also 0.53 times 90. Are those both bigger than 10? I'm not even going to do it. The answer is yes, they're bigger than 10. Now, that tells us that our three conditions are met: random, normal, independent. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Well, I think the next thing we should do is we should figure out our new standard deviation for this sample. And the way we do that is we say, well, 0.47 times 0.53, and we're going to divide that by how many people were in the sample and take the square root of that whole business right there. And let me do that and get back to you. So 0.05, that's our standard deviation for this sample of 90 kids, provided that it is 0.47 is our proportion. Okay, so let's see. Our margin of error, how do we do this again? Oh yeah, let's see. We need the statistic, which is 0.47, and we're going to add and subtract. So we have 0.05 as our standard deviation, but we need to know how many standard deviations we are away. Where do we find that? Well, we want to do a 95% confidence interval, which means we're in here and we're getting 95% of the data like this. Okay, this is the middle, our proportion. Well, how far are we? Right here, what's the distance from the middle? How many standard deviations are we away? Well, don't forget that that's 95%, so we split the last 5%, 2.5% on this side, and 2.5% on this side. Let me fix those twos like that. And so if we think about where is that number way up there, well, it's all the way up at 97, so 2.5 plus 95 all the way up there gives us, so that's going to give us 97.5. Well, what do? We put this into inverse norm. Like this. So let's see. In the calculator, we put in inverse norm. I think you know where that is. And the real important number that we put in there is 0.975. What does that spit out? And I think it is 1.96 is the number. That's how many standard deviations we are away. So here we go. We're going to put this 1.96 in there. 1.96. This is our margin of error. This is what we think it is about, but we need to have a little bit of cushion on either side, and this is our cushion, 1.96 times 0.05. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll figure all that stuff out. So I figured that stuff out. I multiplied the two numbers. I got 0.098, so I'm just going to round that up to 10. Okay, and so that means that on the low side is 0.37, and on the high side is 0.57. That is our interval. What does that mean? Well, we say that we're 95% certain, okay, or confident, that the true proportion of our kids that participate in extracurricular sports is somewhere between 37% and 57%, slightly lower than the average that they said in that statistic. Okay, so that is a 95% confidence interval.